topics in the chat box to the right of the video. Ask questions by making use of the same chat box. Your questions will not appear in the chat. They will, however, be recorded, collated, and answered in due course, and you will receive an email with the answers to the questions not answered in the presentation. The webinar recording and presentation will also be available at the end of the webinar.
Good day, all members of SA United Employers Organization, colleagues, and also other viewers, visitors to this webinar. We have provided a workflow flowchart. It's called the COVID-19 TERS versus UIF claims flowchart, and it is advisable that you keep this handy during the presentation for ease of reference. During the webinar today, we will deal with who qualifies for TERS, preparing your application, and how to lodge your application. We have been advised that changes are imminent to the process, although we felt that we cannot delay this process, and therefore we are continuing with this webinar. We will advise if there's any changes coming through from the department or from NEDLAC. We will advise all members accordingly. The purpose of today's webinar is to determine if your company qualifies for COVID-19 TERS, the guidelines on the application requirements and supporting documents, and how to submit your application. So COVID-19 TERS is as a result of the national disaster as declared by the state president, the subsequent lockdown, which enables the various ministers within their portfolios to make regulations. And one of these regulations that we are dealing with today in particular would be the COVID-19 TERS, C19 TERS, the official name. TERS stands for Temporary Employer-Employee Relief Scheme, and I will explain what it entails. So let's first of all look at who qualifies for this. If we look at the first category, we can call this the operational requirements category. And the first qualification would be the employer has closed its operations, which means it's in total lockdown and not operating at this present moment. It has to be for 3 months or less. And of course, at this stage, let's hope it won't be necessary to go beyond the 21 days as declared at the moment, the lockdown. Then it's also one of the qualifications is the employees are not working reduced hours. Reduced hours, we mean the employer is still open, but the employees are not working their full 45 hours a week. They may be down to 30 hours per week. And then also the employer is not self-quarantined. The last two qualifications we will deal with later on in the presentation under UIF benefits. This does not form part of your TERS benefit. In terms of the affordability qualification, the employer is not paying his employees. We also have to mention here and extend this to arrangements like some employers have done where employees have applied for leave and they are being paid for their leave during this time. They will not qualify for a TERS payment. Secondly, the employer cannot afford to pay his employees, and the term used in the regulations, distress. Very difficult to define distress, but here we would look at factors such as you are not being paid as an employer by your clients, you are battling to get in your payments, and therefore you are under financial distress. Further qualification, of course, is to look at the employer is registered with UIF. In other words, you have a valid UIF registration number. Secondly, the closure is directly linked to COVID-19, to the virus. If you qualify and you've answered yes to all of these questions, then the COVID-19 TERS applications will come into effect, and it is delinked from UIF. What does it mean? It just means there's a separate fund available for payment, and also an easier process. If you can recall, initially we spoke about the illness benefit and reduced working time. That would be normal UIF benefits, and I will still deal with those applications later on in the presentation. How to prepare your application. Remember, this application is for the period from the 27th of March until the 16th of April. If the lockdown is extended, then a second application will have to follow. But this is the initial period is from the 27th of March until the 16th of April. The initial guidelines stated that you need to open a dedicated bank account. We have established that this is for bargaining councils only. However, we do recommend that you do open a dedicated bank account. The reason for that is just to protect yourself as an employer. For instance, if it goes into your normal trade account, the one that you use every day, and you run into financial difficulties, and your normal debit orders would go through taking money from this benefit, you might have problems. So we recommend that you stick to that, try and open a dedicated bank account and have the payment paid into that account. Then secondly, a letter of authority on a company letterhead, granting authority to an individual to claim on behalf of an employer, which means the person in your office that will actually work with the claims. The next one is a bit more involved, and that is your employer's declaration for shutdown. It's a spreadsheet or your payroll that you export into the CSV format. The reason why I say this is involved is you have to study the TERS guide that you will receive when you register for the appropriate formats and the information required. I can also just confirm that this document, this spreadsheet then, in fact, replaces the standard UI19 form. So all the information that you would normally put on the form will be in this spreadsheet. These spreadsheets are available also on the landing page of United Employers Organization. I have to point out that part of the regulation says that when you submit your application, you cannot make changes to this application at the later stage, and therefore it's crucial to ensure that all employees are listed in the declaration, there's no omissions, and that you cannot make submissions at a later stage. Please make sure that your information that you send through as far as the spreadsheet is concerned is correct. The next one at this stage also, there's some doubt about the correct format of that, is the Memorandum of Agreement. Because you are going to act as an agent really for UIF, there has to be a Memorandum of Agreement between yourself as the employer and the UIF. This will then enable you to receive the money from UIF and pay it over to your employees. One of the requirements that we've picked up under U-filing, and not even the normal regulation, says that the Memorandum of Agreement is only required when you employ 10 or more employees. I will recommend that you fill in the memorandum and sign it in any case, so that you are not disqualified at the later stage because you have not submitted the Memorandum of Agreement. When you receive the Memorandum of Agreement in our pro forma documents, please study it and understand the legal implications of this document. Complete where applicable, and if you have to make changes, make those changes, and then you can sign this document. We've also received information from the UIF that you do not have to include the Memorandum of Agreement in your initial submission to them, as it may be done and finalized before payment is made. However, if at all possible, please complete it and submitted together with your other documents. Further proof required in your submission would be proof of salaries or wages for the last 3 months. That would be your payroll info. So if you are making use of a payroll application or payroll software, you would find some export functionalities within this payroll system. This you can print into a report, and that would be for the last 3 months, January, February, and March of this year. If you do not have that, if you make use of another form of software like Excel, then you will have to attach those Excel spreadsheets. If you do not have that, but you've got the pay slips, you can also attach that for all the employees. This, of course, is to verify that your spreadsheet containing the information and the claim that you're putting in on behalf of the employees are correct, and that you're not inflating your application. As far as the bank account is concerned, and just to recap, remember the dedicated account versus your normal account. Either way, you have to submit proof in the form of a certified bank statement. Now, there are questions. Can I get a letter from the bank which is stamped to confirm that this is my company's bank account? I would say yes, that is acceptable. However, the regulations clearly stipulates that it must be a certified bank statement. So in order, once again, as a recommendation, in order not to have problems with your claim, get a certified bank statement and submit that with your application. The submission then, remember to send then your email to apply to COVID-19 claims at labour.gov.za, and remember to have all your attachments: the letter of authority, proof of the bank account, the prescribed declaration, your spreadsheet, your 3 months payroll proof, and then the signed memorandum of agreement. Expected period before you can receive payment would be around 30 days. So if you have not received this payment into your account within 30 days, you may then query with the TERS benefit fund. Once you've received your money, you will then pay your employees, and it must be paid within 5 days of receipt of this money into your account. No payments by cash or check may be made to the employees. It must be paid into the employee's account. If you have had resignations or retrenchments or dismissals during this process, in other words, from the day that you've applied until the day that you receive the money, it's important that you notify COVID-19 claims of the change. You cannot simply just retain that money being paid to you. How much will be paid? Well, there's a sliding scale of between 38% to 60%, and it works on the national minimum wage, which is 3,500 Rand, up to a ceiling of 17,700, being the annual threshold as declared by the minister. So our understanding of this is that if your employees earn around 3,500 Rand, they would receive about 60% of that through the TERS benefit. However, if you are earning 17,700 Rand, then you would receive about 38% of that, which is approximately 6,700 Rand. Remember, these amounts will be prorated for the 3-week period of the lockdown. We are also advised to retain all documents pertaining to the claim and keep in the audit trails for 5 years. You have to keep these documents. Therefore, once again, it's advantageous if there is a dedicated account, because it will be so much easier to keep a record of this than if it's in your normal account. There are exclusions in the TERS regulations, and the first one would be for reduced working time and then illness benefits. There's also a booklet available. It's called the Employer's Aid. Do not confuse this book with the Employer's Aid on TERS. I'm referring to the Employer's Aid for UIF benefits, which means benefits that have not been delinked from the normal UIF scheme. So TERS would not be applicable to employers not closing. Reduced working hours fall under normal UIF benefits. Complete the UI-19 and all supporting documents like you would normally do for a UIF claim, but in this case, you would use the reason code 17 if you file a claim for reduced work time. Just to summarize, this means that you are still working, but your employees are not working the full 45 hours a week. You've reduced their working hours maybe to 2 days a week or 20 hours a week, which means they will then qualify for this benefit. In this case, the illness benefit, and in particular, the self-quarantine benefit. Once again, UIF aid booklet, not the TERS booklet. It does not apply, TERS does not apply to self-quarantined employees. This benefit will fall under normal UIF benefits. You will complete the UI-19 form and all the relevant documents as per a normal application, but here you will use the reason code 10, illness benefits. If an employee has self-quarantined, there must be an agreement between the employer and the employee, which must accompany your application to UIF. This is for a period of up to 14 days. If, however, it's for longer than 14 days, a medical practitioner's note, a doctor's note, will be required in order for the employee to claim from UIF. I just want to touch on retrenchments as well. If there are retrenchments during this stage, that you've managed to follow Section 189 procedures and you are retrenching, even as a direct result of COVID-19, it will fall under the normal UIF application. In conclusion, I would just like to remind you to prepare properly before submission, as mistakes may not be easily rectified. Ensure that your application is fully compliant. In other words, the spreadsheet is in the correct format and all the supporting documents are attached. Ensure that it's attached. It's quite important that you do not send separate emails. The submission email address we have given to you. And there's also in your TERS aid booklet, you would find a fax to email if you would rather like to fax your application. You may follow up if there's no answer or payment within 30 days from the submission. SA United Employers has gone into consultation and has, at preferential rates to the members, appointed approved TERS service providers. The details are in the presentation, so you may contact Yes Domestic or WHM. There's email addresses available and you may contact them. I would also like to remind you, you may visit the landing pages of SA United Employers Organization, which will be given, a link will be given for that. And then also this presentation will be available on our YouTube channel. Thank you for your time, and we will also give an opportunity for questions and guidance subsequently. Thank you very much.
If you have any other questions, we will now give some time for you to ask them. Your questions, however, will not appear in the chat box. They will, however, be recorded, collated, and answered in due course, and you will receive an email with the answers to the questions not answered in the presentation. Thank you for your participation in this webinar. We want to thank you for your participation in this webinar, and we hope to see you in the next one.